Hey everybody, it is Thursday, January 7th, and Friday, January 8th, and we are going to do the last part of our amendment video here, so you can just continue on your note pressure that we were working on with Tuesday and Wednesday this week. So we are going to be looking at finishing up with the amendments. So when I had the video the other day, we ended with the Bill of Rights. So we introduced that. So we'll go through these again. I'll hit them kind of quickly here since I already spent some time on those. So the First Amendment is religious and political freedom. So the thing that most people think about is freedom of speech. And again, freedom of speech is in here. We talked about how that doesn't protect you against the consequences of your speech, but it does protect you from being punished by the government for speaking out against actions that you feel are unjust by the government. Freedom of the press is in there. So that means that the government can't censor newspapers and other forms of media. Now, there is things like libel and slander. Slander is spoken word, libel is written, where they can't just a newspaper can't just publish stuff that they know is obviously false with the intent of damaging somebody. There are some limits. All of these freedoms, there are some limits, but overall, the government can't censor what newspapers and other media publish. The freedom of petition, that means you have the right to petition the government for something. So if you're unhappy with something with the government, you have the right to petition that. Freedom of assembly, you have the right to peacefully assemble and protest. Now, that line's being crossed a lot, right? So if you were watching the news today, you saw the protest outside the Capitol that ended with people breaking into the Capitol building today and causing problems with that and interrupting the process of counting electoral votes. So you can have rights to peacefully assemble, but when they become violent and disorderly like that, that's where that crosses the line. And then the next part of the First Amendment is the freedom of religion. And remember, I mentioned that there's two different parts to that. There's the Establishment Clause, so the government can't establish an official religion. We can't say that the Catholic Church is the official church of the United States, or Islam is the official religion of the United States. We're not going to establish an official religion. And then the Free Exercise Clause says you have a right to practice whichever religion you want to. Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, again, controversial. What does that mean? Does that mean all weapons? Does that mean assault weapons? There's some dispute on what that means. Third Amendment, we don't talk about that one too much, but again, that's no quartering of troops. That's not really something that we have to deal with in our world today because our soldiers are on bases and whatnot. The Fourth Amendment, search and seizure. Again, that's where the police have to have a warrant to search your property. Probable cause to do it as well. The Fifth Amendment are the rights of an accused person, so there's no double jeopardy. You can't be tried for the same crime twice. You can't be compelled to be a witness against yourself. You have the right to remain silent with Miranda rights. You have the right to due process of law. And another part of the Fifth Amendment, private property shall not be taken without just compensation. This is the eminent domain argument. So let's say you own a house where the government wants to come in and build a road. They can't just take your house and build that road and throw you out in the street. They can actually take your house if it's ruled it's in a public interest, but they have to pay you for it. So they usually actually pay you better than what your house would actually be worth. The Sixth Amendment, you have a right to a speedy public trial. We said, we're not going to lock you up in prison for 10 years before we ever get to put you on trial. And your trial is public, so your family can be there, your supporters can be there. We're not going to have some trial in a basement somewhere where nobody knows what actually happens. Seventh Amendment says you have a right to a trial by a jury in a civil case. A civil case where somebody's suing somebody. Eighth Amendment limits fines and punishments, so we're not going to have excessive bail. So if you are arrested for stealing a candy bar from a gas station, we're not going to put a $5 million bail on you and hold you in prison for stealing a candy bar. And we're not going to have cruel and unusual punishments either. So we're not going to torture people. A Ninth Amendment says that the rights of the people, that just because it's not in the Constitution doesn't mean that you don't have that right. And then 10th Amendment again says that, powers that aren't in the Constitution to the national government automatically go to the states and the people. And that's kind of where we left off the other day. So moving on, and we're not going to talk about every single one of the 27 amendments, but we'll talk about a few of them. So the 13th, 14th, and 15th, these are the Civil War amendments. So these are ones that are passed right after the Civil War. So within 5 years of the end of the Civil War in 1865. The first one in 1865, the 13th Amendment, abolishes slavery. So slavery no longer legal in the United States. The 14th Amendment says that those people that have been slaves, they are now citizens, and they have a right to citizenship and equal justice under law. Now, obviously, nobody that's alive today was a slave, but that amendment is still important because the equal protection clause, I mean, everybody has equal protection under the law. So the law has to apply to everybody the exact same. So, for instance, a few years ago, when the Supreme Court ruled that states can't ban same-sex marriage, that's what they used, the 14th Amendment, because they're saying, hey, if you're telling a gay couple that they can't get married, they're not having equal access to the law that a heterosexual couple would have. 15th Amendment, the right to vote. So the right to vote is extended to all citizens, including the former slaves, and it made sure that those African Americans had the right to vote. Now, the southern states, we'll talk about later, but the southern states found ways around that, right, to continue to oppress and keep that right to vote away from the now freed African Americans. Jumping to the 1900s, the 16th Amendment, passed in 1913, creates an income tax. Prior to that, there was no income tax, but that 16th Amendment made an income tax legal for the United States to enact, which is a tax that's based on your income or the money that you make. Tax day is coming up here, April 15th, where we have to pay our income taxes on the money that we made last year. 17th Amendment changes the Senate. So in the original Constitution, the United States Senate, the senators were picked by the state legislature. So like Missouri, the Missouri General Assembly in Jefferson City would pick their 2 senators to go serve in the Senate. 17th Amendment changes that. 17th Amendment makes it that the people of the states are actually voting for their senators. 18th Amendment bans alcohol, so prohibition. There was a temperance movement that was advocating for the banning of alcohol, and that's what the 18th Amendment does. The 19th Amendment, women's suffrage, which is the right to vote. So prior to 1920, some women could vote in certain states, but not all states. But the Women's Suffrage Amendment, the 19th Amendment in 1920, makes sure that all women in all states have a right to vote. The 20th Amendment in 1933 is called the Lame Duck Session Amendment. So in the Constitution originally, you had the election in November, and then the new president and the new Congress, they didn't take over until next March. So you had from November to March, like 5 months between the end of the election and the beginning of the new presidency. And, originally they needed that because back, in the late 1700s, it took a while to travel places, right? But by now we have trains and stuff. We don't need that. And, that's a long time to wait. So that moved that back to January. So now you had the election in November, new president takes over on January the 20th. Now, if you've been watching the news, some people are saying, hey, even that's too long. We probably need to bump that back even closer because of the problems that are happening right now with the transition between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. The 21st Amendment, same year, 1933. The country realized that banning alcohol was a really, really bad idea. All it did was create a vast organized crime ring or, mafias that were bootlegging alcohol and making tons of money off of it and creating violence in cities with wars between gangs. So they realized, hey, that was a dumb idea. It's just causing more problems. So 21st Amendment repealed the 18th Amendment and made alcohol legal once again. Next thing is the order of succession to the presidency. Now, note the names on here are wrong. These are names from back when President Obama was the president. But, the order of the presidency, you have the president. If something happens to the president, then it goes to the vice president. After the vice president, next line, it is Speaker of the House, who's Nancy Pelosi right now. Then the president pro tem of the Senate, who is the oldest member of the majority party in the Senate. And then it goes down through the cabinet officials. So started with the Department of State, then the Department of Treasury, Defense, and Justice. Those are the oldest parts of the cabinet, so the oldest cabinet offices. One other thing in the Constitution that I wanted to talk about real quickly before we go, and jump back to this. Sorry, go ahead. Jump too far back. Just want to talk about one other article real quickly before I let you guys go. And that is Article 6. So Article 6 is the Supremacy Clause. So Article 6 is the Supremacy Clause. And what Article 6 does is says that national law is supreme state laws. So what that means is states can't, if you have a state law that conflicts with a national law, the national law is what wins out. So I'll think of a dumb example here. Let's say national law says that you can't ban somebody from, or we just talked about the 20th Amendment. 20th Amendment says you can't ban, or that women have the right to vote, right? So let's say Missouri next year said, no, we're going to have only men can vote. Well, that's not going to hold up because that contradicts the Constitution, which is federal law. So Article 6 says that, if state laws conflict with national laws, that you have to go with the national law. National law is supreme. All right, guys. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you later.